Oh no. All right, we're back with some silly questions. We're COMP125, week 10, part 4 of our broadcast. We're in the summer of 2016 semester at Centennial. And we just finished talking about loading a partial file, and I kind of on the break, what I've done is I put it up on GitHub, right? And what I've done is I've made it so that the navbar loads dynamically now. I have to use that word with Ajax, right? And dynamically with Ajax, when I click on these buttons, what is active, the active link, as an example, also changes, right? So the active link shows up here on the top with the different color, and I've done that through JavaScript, right? So again, JavaScript effects. One thing I didn't mention was I've also put this page up on Azure. So if I go to portal.azure.com, and I've done that before I came in today, just to test it, to make sure it works. And if I look at, I think it might be this one, 125 less than 8, no, 125 less than 10, that was this one. If I look at this one, and if I go there, so here's COMP125 less than 10, you can see that it loads the Ajax, right, the Ajax pages. Now there's a bit of a delay. Take a look. It's just a bit of a delay loading up, right? But it still works, right? So you're going to get a bit of response time deficit there, and that's okay. I think what you have to think about is what we're doing. Now, obviously, this is wrong, less than 3. Let's fix this so it says less than 10. And again, we have continuous deployment, so I can do that. And where I can do that is, this is what I was telling you before. One of my students here asked, why navbar? Why would I do a partial? And because now it's much easier for me to modify this one file to affect multiple files. So instead of me going into, and we use the same technique when we do PHP or any kind of MVC framework, we can change our methodology to use an MVC pattern, model, view, and controller, where our views are separated, right? I can do that. So let's take a look at this. I can see that I have my navbar, and in my navbar brand, I have less than 3. I can certainly change this in one place to less than 10. I save it, and I can pump it out to GitHub. So I'm going to kind of add this to GitHub. I'll say updated navbar and other files too. So this is my updated navbar, and then I'm going to kind of push it to GitHub, right? But locally, what I can do is if I go to my contact page, my home page, you can see that now it says less than 10, right? And I only did it one place. I didn't do it for every single page, right? Before, for me to modify my navbar, I'd have to go to every single page and change my navbar. That's bad. Here's something else. I want to add a footer. Right, here's my footer bar, right? And in my footer, I don't have a footer in any one of my pages, right? I want to create something called a sticky footer. So the footer always stays at the bottom of my page, right? Regardless of how much content I have on my page. Well, we're going to go to Bootstrap for this, right? Let's take a look at Bootstrap for a second. And by the way, by now, on Azure websites, if I refresh, should be done, less than 10, right? If I go to my Bootstraps, if I go to Get Bootstrap for a second, and if I look at components, right? Again, I can look at navbar, right? I'm thinking this is where it is. It could be under CSS as well. Let me see if I'll check under CSS. But under navbar, there's different kinds of things, non-nav links, fix to top, here we go, fix to bottom. Here's fix to bottom, right? So what fix to bottom does is it takes a navbar, we create another navbar for the bottom. Here's our navbar. And what we do is this navbar would stick to the bottom of my screen, right? So we have a navbar default, navbar fixed bottom, and then this is the bottom of our screen. Now, something else is also, they also talk about this. They say when we want to do fix to bottom, we got to change our padding, right? Padding bottom to 70 pixels. So padding bottom to 70 pixels. Okay. It says the fixed navbar will overlay your other content unless you add padding to the bottom of your body. Right? Why? Because it's going to overlay, right? We don't want that. We want to push our content so there's a bit of a padding, right? So that's why we have to add this padding bottom of 70 pixels. Let's do this. Take this, right? There's also static top and inverted navbar. But let's take this first thing. So our CSS has to be changed. So I'm going to go to my CSS file. Again, it's centralized CSS, app CSS. So again, I want to add in this stuff to my bottom. Right? I can do the body tag twice if I want to, but what I really want to do is just take this piece, copy it, and paste it in here. rid of this. Now you won't see any difference right now with this with the CSS, but that's the first thing we want to change. Next, also by the way, we're also using Google fonts, right? Let's do the next piece. The next piece that I want to do is I want to add that sticky nav bar. Okay, I'm going to add it in my footer. So all my footer information is going to have my sticky nav bar. I don't want to have that in every place, right? So all that footer information from my nav bar is going to go in there. Let's go back to Bootstrap and get this example nav bar, this one here. Take it, and I want to use another nav bar on the bottom. So nav bar default, nav bar fixed, bottom, right? And here's my container, and inside my container, I'm going to put something like, you know, a copyright information with a date, right? And the page title. How do I do that? So I'm going to say at, right? So I could say and copy, or in a paragraph. Let's say in a paragraph tag, or some kind of H1 tag, or something like that. But we can also put it just inside the end copy. That's like the copyright tag, and then the year, right? So we'll have a span inside there. Follow me here, and the span is going to have a tag, which I'm going to call an ID, right? My span is going to have ID of year, right? And then the inside the year, it's going to give me the year that it is, copyright, whatever the year is, right? And also next to that, we'll say you're on page blah blah blah. We can put that in there as well. So we can say whatever page you're at down here as well. Okay, let's just do the year first. So we'll do this thing here. So I want to include this fixed nav bar with a year, this copyright, and we'll also say, you know, the lesson. So we'll say lesson 10. That's what the lesson is. So we'll have some kind of stuff down there. I want to include this inside my pages, right? So if I go back to my index.html, I want to make a footer. So here's my footer. We'll say a div. Instead of a header like we have here, we'll have a footer, right? With an ID of, we'll just call it footer. Right now, you can also make it by my tag name. There's many ways to do this thing. I'm just going to use a footer with an ID of footer. I'm going to put these footer with an ID of footers every place. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to put it in about, way at the bottom. See how this works. Footer. And I also want to put it in my projects. And I'll put it in my contacts. Right, there's my contact, my footer. So I've got it everywhere, I think. About, index, projects, and contact, right? There it is. So this is my footer. All right, so we got someplace we're going to put the footer. Now we got to build the HTML to do such a thing, right? So we got our nav data. You can see how this is going to be tedious here. I'm going to say var xhr footer data. All right, that's where it's going to be. By the way, there's other ways that are way easier to do this. You can certainly use an array of XHR objects. Oh, I don't want to confuse you, but you could. An array of XHR objects, right? You could do that. But we don't want to do that right now. And what I want to do is, once I have my footer data, I want to do something similar. I want to create load my nav bar. I want to read my data, and I want to put my footer. So I will say, you know, in my footer, I'm going to say load footer. Right? That's what this is going to do. I don't have a function called load footer right now. Let's add that in. So I'll say function load footer. Right, there it is. Oops. I can do this properly. This is my load footer. And my footer data is, of course, I'm going to read the footer data. So I'm going to have a function like that, structure it the same way. So read footer data. I don't have anything there to do. And it's going to be more looking like this read nav data than read address book, right? So it's going to look more like this. I'm going to take this piece, right? Actually, it's going to look more like this piece as opposed to that piece. There we go. Get rid of this, and I'll put that in there. That's what it's going to do. Instead of doing this, it's going to attach to footer, right? So a thing with footer. And instead of XHR nav data, we're going to say XHR footer data, Make sure that the status is all put in there, so all this is changed. So instead of, so it's going to take the response text from the footer, and we don't want to set the active page. We don't want to do that. That's not part of it. So this is just our footer data. And we also need to fix up our, when we actually do the XML request for our the read part, which is down here, load navbar. We'll take this piece, and we'll put it in there. We'll clean up some stuff too. Get rid of this for now. And in my load footer, I'm going to go to partials footer. This is a long way to do it. Ready state change, we're going to go read, instead of read navbar, read footer. That's where it's going to go. Everything is done. And we've got a load navbar and load footer. It's going to attach to everything. And so if we go back to this, we should have a footer page if everything works out. And now we have a block. We have a problem. Let's take and see what our problem is, because once we have one problem, we'll see what the other issues are. It says, on const type error, cannot read property ready state of undefined. Okay, I know why. Because our load footer has to use the right XHR footer data instead of our load footer. If we use the wrong one, being very quick and copy paste errors. Okay, there we go, and look, there's the footer, lesson 10, right? And no matter where I move it, it's at the bottom of my page, sticky footer, right? Even with projects and about, bottom of my page, right? As well as, even though it scrolls, and contact. Scrolls to the bottom of my page, right? So that's pretty cool. So if I take this away, you can see that the lesson 10 is at the bottom all the time. My footer, right? That's good. And I've done that dynamically by loading it once. And now I want to modify my footer, right? Because remember that and this will be the last thing we do today, but if here's my footer, and you can see that I have and copy, and I want to put the year in there. So I want to put my date time now inside this ID, right? So my inner text or inner HTML is going to be date time now. Right? I want to use my data object to do that, right? So how do I do that? So I'm going to go in my app.js. When my footer's finished loading, right, I'm going to access the date or the, go back there to my footer for a second. What did I call it? My year, the year ID, an ID with a span of year. Let's go back there, a span with an ID of year. And if I look at when my footer is finished loading, which is here, I'm going to inject that data. So I'm going to say, well, okay, fine. Here's my main nav. I'm going to make another variable. And what do I call it? Main nav. We'll rename this to footer. That's not really correct, right? We should kind of name it something that it makes sense. So var, we're going to make it so that year is equal to my date, right? Dot now, my year. But is it the whole date, or is it just the option? And do I have to put it like this? It returns a number, right? Or is it a property? It's a method. So here's my constructor. And if I want to look at the year, so I want to just say the year is my year effect. Can I do that? How do we do that? Do you remember? Right? Let's try this and see what happens with my year. We'll probably get the wrong thing. So var year is this. That's what we're going to say, right? But what I want to say is document, of course, dot get element by ID year, right? We're going to say year, then dot inner text, or we're going to say inner text will be fine. Inner text, because we don't want to make it inner HTML, is equal to the XHR, or sorry, the date dot now, right? So we got this long date. It worked right there. Let me go to something else so you can see. I'll bring it up again. I'll go inspect. It worked, but the problem is it's giving me a long thing. I want the date now. How do I find the date now? Anyone remember how to use date? So I don't want to have this. I want to get the year from the date. How do I do it, guys? Come on. So date now. Can I also go date dot? Is there some other property that I can use in the date that's there. So now is there. I know that now is a method for date. What about other things? So if I want to look at the date object, we did this back lessons ago, right? So JavaScript, come on guys, it's easy to do. There's a date object or date. So there's a date reference, then date, and then I can say year, month, day. I want to return my method, which would be the get year is what I want. Get time now returns the number of milliseconds, right? What about the date time? Is there such a date time constructor, right? Something like that. So JavaScript date time. Now, date time in JavaScript to locale string. Don't want to do that. I was right the first time, which is JavaScript date. And I want to get year, which is what I really want to do. Here's a date reference, and I want to use the, instead of now, I can use get year, and it says get full year is the method instead. Let's see what full year gives you, 2016. So date.get full year. So I'm going to just copy this, get full year, and go to here. And instead of date time now, we'll get full year. And then when we go back and save, I can see that I'm going to get the full year. I get nothing. How come? Here's a reason. We're trying to use the date object as a static object, right? And that's not what we want to do. We want to make another variable that says, yeah, we have to instantiate. Or we can use the anonymous object. We can say new date. But the problem is there is no full year, right? So we can't do that. Sorry. Current year is equal to our current date, or my date. Date is equal to new date. And we're going to say date dot get year, get full year, right, is what we want to use. So we're going to take this piece, and we're going to say one of those. Come on, Tom. Copy paste. Sometimes I want to go like, argh. There we go. 2016. Copyright. We probably want to put a copyright in there too. We made a mistake. So here, so we want to say copyright 2016, right? So we'll say all rights reserved. Let's say all rights reserved, all rights reserved, less than 10. So do that, one of those. You can see that 2016, all rights reserved, less than 10, right? And it updates automatically, right? Why? Because I only have to change it once, and then I can change it. It changes everywhere, right? Also, the great thing about this is my navbar default, I can make this my navbar inverse because it's inverted. But what? How about my text? Of my navbar inverse, I got to change my text, right? I could change my text color, but there actually is a nicer way to do it because these are non-linked items. That's why it becomes black like this. And if you go to Bootstrap for a second, there is something called link text, or sorry, non-nav links, where you have to say my class navbar sign, blah, blah, blah. And inside my anchor tag or something, you have to mark it as a navbar, my class is navbar link or navbar text, right? So navbar text you have to use to kind of make it so you can see it. That's just the thing. So I don't have to make my own CSS class. So if I go back here, I can see that I got a span of the year, right? So I can use, in this span, I can say something like my ID is year, and my class for this one. I could surround this with another div tag. Or I could say something like class is equal to navbar dash text. Put this all this stuff inside. There's a this thing here. Let's see if that works. Which gives me my right colors. So if I look at here, you can see now that I can see it, right? Otherwise, it'll come out weird. It will come out, you won't be able to see it. So here's my all rights reserved on the bottom. And you can see that how that frames the whole thing, right? So all the time, it's always there. And if I scroll up and down, it's sticky. It's a sticky nav. So I can go all the way down and read it. And same thing with my contact page. I can see that the contact page, I have a footer to my contact page now, or before I didn't have it. So just to recap what we've done today, right? And we're going to get to this next week. Remember that for assignment number 3, you do not need to do what I did today. You don't need to split up your files and make it so that there's a nav bar that's separate or whatever. If you do, I'll give you a bonus. Please notice when you submit your files, I'm giving you the pattern so you can do it, right? But you don't have to do it. It's not required for assignment 3. If you want to to make it simple for yourself, you want to get full marks, all you need to do is get your data. So instead of me doing an About Me page with all this paragraph data that's hard-coded, look at my About Me page. A good example of that data, right? So if I look at my About page, you can see that it's hard-coded here, and I have my paragraph data here. I would take this paragraph data and make another paragraphs.json file, and I would load this data in with JavaScript as opposed to hard-coding it like this. Okay, that's a good question. So how do I do images? The answer is I would never, ever hard-code images in a JSON file. But the JSON file could point to my path string for my image, right? So an example would be I could have all my images in my assets, and my JSON file would tell me where my images are. That's all it would do, right? So I would never, ever have to, kind of create my, or put my images in one place. So then they could be dynamically loaded too. So I could have my images, the places where my placeholder for all my images all over the place, right? But my JSON data is where all my images are. Why is this good? Because I can go into my JSON file, and instead of changing my pages, I can just change my JSON data, and I can repoint my images somewhere else if I want to change my image. Yes? Data in other server, in other websites. It's a good question. I've done that. I have another example that I want to show you before you go. I got 1 minute left, so I've got your attention. I'm just going to put this up on GitHub. So I'll say added sticky navbar, sticky footer. That loads with Ajax. Yeah, I want to show you how that's done. So push. There's my sticky footer that loads with Ajax, right? And it's going to be up on GitHub. Let me show you another one. So I'm going to open up another file here, and I've already done this for you guys because I knew someone was going to ask that question. So I'm going to load up something with a lesson 10 variant that I call lesson 10M. Right? I already have this. Lesson 10M, it uses jQuery, right? A little bit of jQuery. This is what jQuery would look like. Yeah, a lot easier, right? And what I'm doing is, I'm not going to show you the other part because the other part shows actually my API key, right? I have an actual API key which I connect to something. There's actually a service called MongoLab. You should be called MongoLab. Now it's called MLab. Let me show you that service. So MLab is a Mongo server that you can sign up for free. We're going to talk about this later on. And when you do full stack development, Mongo, Express, Angular, and Node, you can sign up for MongoLab for free. And Mongo gives you a server, right? So if I log in, and let's see if I can get this right the first time. Sorry, guys. Be patient with me. I have my Mongo server, and what it does, if you want to look at the address book, here's my address book. I put it up on the server, right? Well, I want you to take a look at this, and you tell me what the address book looks like. So here's my collections. I have an address. The collection is called contacts, and I have 2 documents. What do the documents look like to you? JSON, right? So these are the documents. Each document is an object, right? So here's a document object. I have name and number, and I have Jessica Jones. I put her with me too. Why not, right? And then there's name and number for her. And I'm going to read this document using Ajax, right? From my Mongo server with only front-end technologies, right? Just JavaScript. How do I do that? And I can actually write to it too if I want to, right? And this is what I get when I go back. So here's my server. Let's go back and stop this one. And I'm going to just go to the server again. So I'm going to say open in terminal. And I'll run light server here too, light server. Now this is the old version of my page, you can see, right? But if I go look at, if I inspect the page, and if I look at my console, I can see that I'm getting the data from the server, right, with Ajax. So that you can totally do it. If you really want to, I can store stuff on the server. So the stuff I'm showing you, you can port. The idea of what we're doing here with local file, you can have everything up on the server. Yeah. It is MongoDB. MongoLab is MongoDB. Right? So MongoLab, or MLab is what they call themselves now. They've changed their name. There's a different naming convention for this. Something called the database, which is just the database that I call address book, right? And then I have a collection called context, and the context collection has 2 records. Each record is an object, right? And the objects all have information, properties for each of my contexts. Yes? You do not do this. I'm just showing you what you could do if you wanted to. And we're going to talk about more about this next week when we hit. Yes, the code for pulling data from the server is right here. I'm just not going to show you the other part in the video because it also includes, notice the way it works is it says, here's my API key. I'll go to my API key. Look, there's my API key. I don't want to show you this, but what it does is this. It says API mlab.com. This is the link. API 1. My database is called address book. My collections is called contacts. My API key is whatever it is. And then I have my data. I use the get type. It's my application JSON, and I read the data and I output it to the console.
It's the same thing as just now, but shorter.
Yes, yes.
But to do it the jQuery way, you have to have the lab installed.
If you don't do it with MongoLab, you need to have an API key. And I'm sorry, it's getting loud. I'll answer your question after I stop. But we have to have an API key to make it work because it has a whatchamacallit, a REST API that it gives us, a REST API, right? We'll talk about REST API next week. Okay? No.